honored to present Dene Sebastiana, who is a native New Yorker, a teacher, master coach. He is a current leader emeritus and the former executive director of the Mankind Project. Dene has initiated open men's circles in many communities throughout the US and Mexico for more than 35 years. Dene's work teaches men and women and couples how to break through their unconscious patterns, emerging more authentic, self-aware, and open-hearted. He brings a compassionate fierceness and a multi-leveled capacity to get to the heart of the matter through his workshops, trainings, and writing. And he is passionate about gender balance and equality in himself and in all his relationships. His commitment is to change the world through changing himself. He and his beloved Ming celebrate a sacred marriage of over 30 years. They presently live in Tucson, Arizona. I present to you Dene Sebastiana. Incidentally, he has written an amazing book that speaks to all of us. It's a man's journey through this world that he's itemized along the way. This is phenomenal.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you all for coming here today. My name is Dene Sebastiana. Ming and I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I've been invited to speak with you today. In early May of 1988, I'm 40 years old, and I initiate into the New Warrior Network in Chicago. On my initial training, I quickly notice how many white-haired men are here on staff. I think to myself, if all men are here, this must mean something. There's a group of them sitting on the floor at the far end of the pit. I tumble off my carpet work into their arms. They hold me, smile, stroke my hair, wipe away my tears. One old grandfather says to me, "Welcome home." I get home that Sunday night, look at myself in the mirror. I smile and say out loud, "Wow, I'm so different. I've never felt like this before." My journey in this band of brothers is life-changing as men work quickly becomes the focal point of my life. Having searched so many years for an unknown something, an entirely new world is now open. And here I stand in the middle of my life, feeling alive and awake. I'm hungry like a wolf, and I say yes to everything. I devour any and every opportunity to learn about this work. Local trainings and books are plentiful, yet the book that opens my eyes the most is an anthology of essays written by the leading feminist writers of the time, offering their opinions on this new men's movement. One woman writes, "Caring for men's feelings is like caring for the feelings of the Nazi concentration camp guards." Caring for men's feelings is like caring for the feelings of the Nazi concentration camp guards. In that moment, I realized that this work is not going to be some casual men's pickup game, for it has profound cultural implications, political, social, psychological, spiritual, and sexual. And the network that I'm entering could very well be an important fulcrum at this point in time as the gender wars open before us. 2 weeks after my initiation, I meet the woman who becomes my beloved. Little do I realize that the intertwining of this men's work and this intimate relationship dance with Ming and the feminine will redefine my entire life. In early 1998, Ming and I are living in San Diego with our 2 young sons. I'm 10 years into men's work. I take a workshop led by 2 women designed for men to take a deeper look at our mother issues. The work hits me hard. I realize that my relationship with my personal mother is still unresolved. I react to my wife all too often, and the feminine remains a mystery to me. I wonder to myself, would working with women help illuminate the shadows and questions I carry around the feminine? Would it help me in my marriage? And in my learning, might I help women? I feel terribly alone in this inquiry. and I begin to have some judgments about this men's network, as there are no conversations about the feminine at all. A month later, I traveled to Sedona to do a vision quest. I'm guided by a native medicine man, and in my altered state, I'm visited by the sacred feminine. She ushers me through an initiation that breaks my heart wide open and shows me how much damage has been perpetrated by men upon women, upon the earth, and upon the feminine in men. She says to me, now when a woman stands before you and tells you that she has been raped, you will know what to do. I return home. Ming takes one look at me and says, oh my God, Dene, what happened to you? I tell her the story. We both weep with grief and joy. We know that our marriage is taking an exponential leap forward. She also recognizes all too well the territory that I'm about to step into. I share this story with several men in the network, inviting them to join me in this inquiry and the possible creation of a workshop for women. They look at me like I'm speaking in tongues. Only much later do I realize how disturbingly true that is. Only one man steps forward, my dear brother Jim. With the unconditional support of our wives, in 6 months, we design and offer, leaving my father's house, a workshop for women, an opportunity for women to transform and heal her relationships with men, boys, and the patriarchal masculine. Many women come bringing all manner of woundedness from the damage done to them by the men in their lives. We are asked to role play as they project the darkness of men onto us. We make a conscious choice to stand in the fire of women's rage and grief without defending, attacking, justifying, or withdrawing. I realize what an incredible vehicle this is for gender reconciliation, a conscious pathway to bring light and healing to the dark energy that has ruled our planet for 6,000 years. We do 28 workshops in 39 months, ending right after the Twin Towers fall. As I watch it play out on TV, I say out loud, this is the beginning of the end of the patriarchy. The work takes its toll on my body and soul, as healing as it is for the women, as restorative as it is for my marriage. The projections become too heavy and, quite honestly, too dangerous to carry. I'm able to cleanse most. I return to the men's circles, listen to men tell of the damage they have done to women and the damage done to them by women, and the deep trust on both sides of this equation. I sense that it's only a matter of time before it comes to a head, and I feel myself carrying this very struggle deep in my bones and body. The darkness of the patriarchal father lives in all of us. A short while later, I read a book on eldership. The author says that at puberty, a switch is turned on that sets the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies on a transformational ride where everything changes, whether we like it or not. Likewise, he says that at oldership, a similar switch is turned on that offers another potential transformation. But this one requires a conscious choice. If I accept the inevitability of both my physical decline and my ultimate demise, my remaining time moves along one trajectory. However, if I deny or complain or feel victim to what happens to me in my body, my remaining time moves along a very different trajectory. While I'm way too young to comprehend the full meaning of this, in my fatigue, I shiver that this may be closer than I realize. Still, I tuck away the information as some part of me believes it will eventually be important. At 60, my body begins a serious decline, yet my arrogance and pride keep telling me that this is an anomaly, something out of the ordinary. My vanity does not want to give up the belief that I'm still a young warrior. In April 2007, I have double hip replacement surgery. Our boys are now tweeners. I can no longer run or wrestle or play ball with them. Their friends' dads are younger men. Their own dad is an old man. I see the disappointment on their faces. It breaks my heart. Across the next 2 years, my right hip doesn't heal, and I seek out a wide array of modalities to ease the pain. Nothing works. Frustrated and desperate, I'm increasingly dependent on Percocet. I remember that my father had hip and knee surgery, and both grandfathers walk with canes. I go see my second orthopedist. I sit in his office while he looks at the x-rays on his light board. After an agonizing 15 minutes, he turns to me and says, I believe I know why you're in pain. The cement that anchors the prosthetic into your femur has come loose. We can clean it out and fix it. I've waited so long to hear someone, anyone, say that to me. The tears stream down my face. This is the first time that my body has failed me to this degree. But my vanity says that I'm still young and the doc can fix this. The surgery is a success, and my hips, while functional, are not quite right. I'm constantly aware of the nagging pain of carrying 5 pounds of metal in my ass. Little did I know what will follow. In early 2020, COVID hits the planet like a meteor. In December, my wife and I contract the virus. We are flat on our backs for the whole month. I've just begun to write my book. My writing stops in its tracks. The virus has invaded all my dimensions: physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. In my inner reverie, all I can see is my innumerable failings. I'm completely in shadow. I'm a total mess. As the new year arrives and COVID eases out of our bodies, I happen upon a book by Bruce Lipton called The Biology of Belief. A microbiologist, he says that the Newtonian Darwinian consciousness is slowly giving way to quantum thinking, but not so much in medical science. Newtonian thinking says, I'll believe it when I see it. Quantum thinking says, when I believe it, then I will see it. My takeaway is threefold. The cells in my body are listening, so what I believe and affirm is who I will become. If my unconscious beliefs are mostly negative, as they usually are, then this is who I become. If I can pay attention to what I am affirming, I can indeed change my life. That summer we're in Denver and my right hip flares up again. Once again, I'm in deep pain. It is 9 years since my last surgery. I know that my age, genetics, and my negative thinking have caught up to me. The reality of COVID, degenerative hips, wrinkly skin, gray hair have shattered my denial. I look at myself in the mirror and honestly, I'm scared and hurting. My patterns are etched so deeply in my brain and on my face, a simple attitude shift will not be enough. In my meditations, I ask humbly for support. Please show me some sign of what to do next. A few weeks later, while strolling through the tattered covered bookstore in downtown Denver, I come upon a book by Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind, The New Science of Psychedelics. A passage captures my attention. Michael Pollan says, by temporarily disabling the ego, the psychedelic molecules quiet the part of the brain called the default mode network, thought to house and govern the ego function. Psilocybin, sacred mushrooms, seems to open a new field of psychological possibility, symbolized by the death and rebirth reported by many. At first, the falling away of the self feels threatening, but if one can let go and surrender, powerful and usually positive emotions flow in, along with formerly inaccessible memories and sense impressions and meanings. No longer defended by the ego, the gate between self and other is thrown wide open. What comes through that opening for many is in a great flood is love. Love for specific individuals, yes, but also love for everyone and everything. Love as the meaning and purpose of life, the key to the universe and the ultimate truth. Ask and ye shall receive, I think, yet never as expected. I know how deeply entrenched my ego is. I know that somehow bypassing it is the key to sustainable attitudinal change. I've had my fair share of psychedelics and have been both illuminated and shattered many times. I honestly thought I was over with them, yet here they are again, offering their unique healing medicine in this very unexpected way. End of July, we're back in Tucson. I visit my third orthopedist. He discovers a disturbingly high heavy metal content in my blood, Both hips need revision, removing all metal on metal contact. In September, they do the right hip. The left is scheduled for 4 months later. While the surgery is structurally a success, I'm in a world of hurt. The Oxycontin runs out way too soon. The pain lingers way too long. While having lunch with a friend one day, he tells me about a man in town who grows sacred mushrooms and guides medicine journeys. I call him immediately. We meet and connect. I book my first journey with him. 1 month after surgery, I'm still in considerable pain and contact my guide to call off my scheduled session. He gently suggests to me that I allow my pain to be an active participant in my journey. I'm at his house early that Saturday morning. I bring photos of my lineage and family. The journey is vivid. My family karma is clear. I find much forgiveness for others and for myself. Throughout the entire 4 hours, I'm all too aware of how painful my right hip is. When I turn to look at the photos of my wife and sons, tears of joy and gratitude burst from my heart. In my left hand, I place my joy and gratitude, and into my right hand, I place the pain in my body. I see clearly that my body may never be rid of this pain. I've accepted that aging inevitably brings forth pain, sickness, and death. I cup my hands together and integrate the pairing and say, I consciously embrace both the joy in my heart and the pain in my body. I hold up the picture of Ming, I kiss it and bring it to my heart. When I look at the picture of Dakota and Dylan, I notice that behind and between them appears to be a waterfall. It is blurry and simply appears as a wide curving swath of white light. And in that moment of awakening, I realize, in spite of the decline of my body, I choose an internal ascending arc of light. In spite of the decline of my body, I choose an internal ascending arc of light. And perhaps my first inkling that my upcoming men's work is with young men. The arc is this: joy, gratitude, creativity, wisdom, humility, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, fierceness, tenderness, all of this and more. All of these arise to fuel our elder missions, whatever they may be. At our age, we need not seek to find them, for the life we have lived will show us what remains. The juiciness of an open, creative heart is always more powerful than the aches and pains of the body. It is all in the attitude. So here I stand today, having been deep in the trenches of men's work since 1988. I've worked with many thousands of men across the planet. I've worked with many women and couples on the carpet of truth. My marriage and parenthood have been their own unique initiations. And my body's decline is an initiation in and of itself. In April of this year, I published my first book, a memoir titled Fierce and Tender, Healing the Deep Masculine for Women and Men. From the introduction, I write, we stand at a crossroad. The Hopis call this the end of days. In the middle of the road stand the angels and demons, not literally, but maybe. The intersections are many: red versus blue, white versus color, men versus women, haves versus have-nots, religion versus religion. Each claims the light for itself. Each projects the darkness onto the other. The hard to see truth is that we are one, each is other, each is both. This very blindness to our oneness is the greatest danger of all. In 1968, the photos from space of this swirling blue and white ball without barriers transformed human consciousness. We can no longer deny that we are one, yet we consistently choose to. Now, for the first time in the history of mankind, we have the technology and the weaponry to bring human civilization to a fiery end. And this is precisely why this crossroad is like no other. Men in power, men with unbridled egos, full of arrogance and entitlement, with a dangerous disregard for human rights, are making decisions that has our civilization staring into the abyss of self-annihilation. With toxic viruses, climate change, the continuing extinction of species, growing authoritarianism, political corruption, obscene wealth, and war, all claiming their many pounds of flesh. Men's work has never been more important than it is now. As dark and hopeless as it feels sometimes, and painful to witness the continuing horror of the toxic patriarchal masculine, it is important to understand that all people of all colors are imprisoned in unconscious imprinted patterns that are no longer sustainable. A result of the Me Too, women have regained their voices, calling out the isms and the injustices with heart and power. People of color, indigenous people, LGBTQ people, oppressed people across the planet are calling out the shadows of men, of oppression. Yet sadly, not enough men, especially white men, are calling out the toxic masculine. So many men remain stuck inside the man box. The blindness of privilege, the arrogance of greed, the relentless quest for power, and the dangerous practice of perpetrating violence against the things beyond control leaves us all standing at the edge of destruction. And still, I have hope in my heart. I see the young men coming into our circles. This past weekend, I staffed the first NWTA in Arizona since COVID shut us down, and there were less than a handful of men over 50. While the young men still struggle with the conflicting definitions of manhood, they have great heart and social conscience. Many have already transcended racism, sexism, and the other isms that divide us. They come looking for meaning, purpose, sense of belonging, and some models of a new way of being a man. And they are finding that the new warrior is alive and well in themselves, in us, and in the world. And honestly, I never thought I would say this. It is the elders who must now lead this charge. It is the elders, we, who now must lead this charge, not physically, not from in front, and not necessarily from behind either, for here our male hierarchy loses its importance. Aging rudely shows that we are no longer young and we can no longer do the heavy lifting. We finally understand that conscious self-care is our number one priority. But we know that it is not muscle which illuminates this path. It is a whole other skill set. It is conscious eldership. Robert Moore, the Jungian theologian, and Douglas Gillette, the mythologist, give us a clear typology of the four mature archetypes in both men and women: the lover, the warrior Amazon, the magician creatrix, and the king and queen. As all things change and evolve, personally, I think there's a fifth archetype, perhaps the elder alchemist. No longer concerned about power or control or fame or fortune, we welcome the freedom that eldership brings. We know that time and gravity go undefeated, and facing death requires courage. Imagine elders of all persuasions doing their carpet work on death, wrestling with it, trying to negotiate with it, falling on our knees in the face of its unrelenting power. I see us at our own tombstones, speaking our own eulogies, listening to friends talk about us at our funeral, looking back on the joys and sorrows of how we have lived our lives. We realize that eldership happens as a function of our consciousness, and that death is the only real fear. When we embrace it, when we choose love over fear, all manner of good things happen. For the first time in my 35 years in men's work, we're taking a deeper look at the feminine. I've long believed that this is the missing component in the development of the mature masculine. The man box, the repository of all things felt and tender that are denied, still rules. The media, and especially films, continue selling the old warrior values contained in the hard bodies of men killing men. Thankfully, in this final chapter, diminishing testosterone in men and increasing testosterone in women enable us to access more of our interior feeling world. Robert Moore once called this two ships passing in the night. I see it quite the opposite, a time for genuine partnership. Men feel into the softer side of our nature as women feel into their warrior side. Knowing that time is short and relationships become more important, we are slower to judge, we are kinder, patient, more compassionate. We're more attentive. We stop chasing windmills. We accept life on its own terms. We share our gifts, speak our truth, always with a deep appreciation for the beauty, fragility, and the many contradictions of this life. We recognize the paradox of a conscious life as we embrace both the fierce and the tender, both the fierce and the tender qualities of our own nature. And perhaps, if we are lucky, we find a new mission, our ascending arc of light. Several years ago, my dear friend George Durrani and I created a workshop for men, a conscious inquiry into both the masculine and the feminine as archetypal energies, not gender, not sex, as archetypal energies, as complementary ways of being in the world. We designed this to take a deeper look at the sacred feminine, both in our intimate relationships and in our own nature, as well as preparing for death, the final return to the womb of the universal mother, a place for younger men dealing with the challenging dance of warrior meeting lover energy, and for older men courageously looking directly at death with eyes and hearts wide open. This December here in Arizona, we offer Desert Wisdom 5. A quote from James Baldwin from The Fire Next Time. Perhaps the whole root of our trouble, the human trouble, is that we will sacrifice all the beauty of our lives, will imprison ourselves in totems, taboos, crosses, blood sacrifices, steeples, mosques, races, armies, flags, nations, in order to deny the fact of death, which is the only fact we have. It seems to me that one ought to rejoice in the fact of death, or to decide, indeed, to earn one's death by confronting with passion the conundrum of this life. One is responsible to life. It is the small beacon in that terrifying darkness from which we come and to which we shall return. One must negotiate this passage as nobly as possible for the sake of those who are coming after us. This last topic I offer carefully, in part because of its incredulity, but also how deeply it landed in me. Several months ago, I picked up a book by a man named Eben Alexander, MD, a neurosurgeon, Harvard-educated, Duke Medical School graduate, longtime veteran of many brain surgeries, constantly at the edge of life and death, and with a hardcore belief that the brain drives everything, including consciousness. Skeptical of near-death experiences, he contracts E. coli bacterial meningitis in a coma for a full week with very little brain activity. All the doctors agree that there is a 98% chance that he will die, and if he survives, he'll be a vegetable on life support. Yet somehow he does survive and recovers all his faculties, leaving the entire medical establishment baffled by the science of it, calling it totally unexplainable, maybe even a miracle. Shortly after coming out of coma, he vividly describes his experience on the other side, a rich and complex story, beautiful in its multidimensional tapestry. He acknowledges that language is inadequate in describing the depth and knowingness of his experience. One that shattered his scientific thinking, one that was met with doubt and great skepticism from his peers in the medical community. Yet in spite of that, he courageously writes and talks openly about his experience because he believes the implications for humanity are too important to leave unspoken. He writes of his experience in other realms. Here are some passages. I didn't have a body, not one that I was aware of anyway. I was simply there in this place of pulsing, pounding darkness. Language, emotion, logic, these were all gone, as if I had regressed back to some state of being from the very beginnings of life, as far back perhaps as a primitive bacteria that, unbeknownst to me, had taken over my brain and shut it down. As I had no memory of prior existence, my time in this realm stretched way, way out, months, years, eternity. As my awareness sharpened more and more, I edged ever closer to panic. Whoever or whatever I was, I did not belong here. I needed to get out. But where would I go? Even as I asked that question, there was something that wasn't cold or dead or dark, but the exact opposite of all those things. And if I tried for the rest of my life, I would never be able to do justice to this entity that now approached me, to come anywhere close to describing how beautiful it was. Someone was next to me, a beautiful girl with high cheekbones and deep blue eyes. Without using any words, she spoke to me. The message went through me like a wind, and I instantly understood that it was true. The message had 3 parts, and if I had to translate them into earthly language, I say they ran something like this. You are loved and cherished dearly forever. You have nothing to fear, and there is nothing you can do wrong. In the next moment, my situation was, strangely enough, something akin to that of a fetus inside a womb. The mother was God, the creator, the source who's responsible for making the universe and all that is in it. This being was so close that there seemed to be no distance at all between God and myself. Om was the sound I remember hearing, associated with that omniscient, omnipotent, and unconditionally loving God. But any descriptive words fall short. I was a citizen of a universe, staggering in its vastness and complexity, and ruled entirely by love. Our truest, deepest self is completely free. This is a true spiritual self that all of us are destined someday to recover. But until that day comes, we should do everything in our power to get in touch with this miraculous aspect of ourselves, to cultivate it and bring it to the light. This is the being living within all of us right now. And that is, in fact, the being that God truly intends us to be. Finally, upon my return, my mind was squeezing its way back into the all too tight and limiting suit of physical existence, with its spatio-temporal bounds, its linear thought, and its limitation to verbal communication. I was making a dangerous re-entry from a place far away to the abandoned, but now once again functional space station of my brain. Physical existence is characterized by defensiveness, whereas spiritual life is just the opposite. Personally, I've always been distrusting of religion, yet my heart and soul are deeply spiritual. This book literally blew my mind in a way that feels as if the last remnants of my own personal doubt and fear have very quietly slipped away. Not that I no longer feel fear, but rather fear no longer holds me captive. I feel a loving fearlessness in my life that I've prayed and longed for since I was a boy. I know that near-death experiences are subjective, yet they are startlingly similar. Science has doubts because these experiences are not provable, quantifiable, or replicatable. Sometimes I think that science has become its own religion, and while I do not doubt what science proves to be true, there is so much in our human experience that is not provable. But that does not mean that it is not true. Personally, I believe in multiple dimensions, in invisible worlds, in magic, in the non-rational. I believe in reincarnation, and I believe in karma. If it is true that our only real choice is between love and fear, then I choose love. And if God really does exist, could it be anything other than love? And if my heart is the center of where I feel love in my body, could it be that this is where God resides? And if God does live inside my heart, does it not make sense that when my heart is open, I experience the divine? It is said that the human heart is what connects the heaven and the earth. So here I stand, open, grounded, loving, fierce, tender. And today, I invite you all, especially us elders, do whatever inner work remains, come to terms with your mortality, find the forgiveness to release your karma, and embody the paradox of your unflinchingly fierce and deliciously tender qualities. Thank you so much.